Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of JRNI Coaching.
We're super passionate about all things coaching and want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training over 1,000 life coaches.
Dive deep into a more meaningful career, find freedom, and make an impact on the world around you.
On today's episode, Noelle and I are going to talk about how to ignite your spark when you're feeling drained. And man, who can't relate to this?
Yes, 'tis the
Yeah.
season for feeling drained.
Yeah. But also, just in general, I think the coaching journey uh, almost requires you to feel drained sometimes. It's like there's no way to avoid this. This is just part of the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think universal. I mean, as you're experiencing with, for example, parenthood,
Oh
how's that
yeah.
going?
Yeah, I mean it's exhausting and then it's exhilarating and then it's exhausting. It's that whole ebb and flow,
Yeah.
like
So,
like life.
yeah, just like life and like nature, there are storms, there's drought. And so for humans, feelings of depletion come from all different sources, whether
Mhm.
it's, sadness, anxiety, stuckness, exhaustion, and it's real. It's part of the tapestry of our lives.
Yeah. So when you feel drained, um, and you mentioned our limbic system, what happens to our body? Like what's the chemical stuff that's going on that produces then anxiety and sadness and all the stuff.
Absolutely. So the feelings themselves have attending chemicals, and with negative feelings, cortisol is usually the culprit that we have to be
Mm-hmm.
aware of. That if you're
Mm-hmm.
having a big time stress response based on something like fear, that's an instantaneous cortisol hit. If you're
Right.
sad, you'll get a cortisol bump the next day. So any way you slice it, if you're feelings fall into the negativity bucket, you're going to have an increase in cortisol. And what this does is it disrupts all of your body's natural processes and it gets us
Mm.
out of sync with everyday functioning.
Yeah, and I wonder if you have a sadness. There's a blanket of sadness that the cortisol is a slow drip, and I wonder if that's more dangerous because it's less detectable.
It could be that what you're describing sounds like the conditions for low grade depression.
Yeah, yeah, dysthymia, depression, not wanting to, like being able to function, but not really at near your level. So just kind of going through the motions of life. I always feel like that's more damaging because it's almost like it's not extreme enough to take major action, and also it could go a long time without you noticing, and then you wake up one day and you're like, I did nothing for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and that falls under the bucket of chronic.
Yeah.
And especially as all of us are dealing with the pandemic and the different challenges and ebb and flow of life, the pandemic's just kind of hanging out in the background.
Hmm.
And so folks are really starting to feel the chronic nature of as you exactly described, that really slow cortisol drip. So it's problematic. And that's why we're talking about it today.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we do.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in Coach Land and in Journey Land, we rely really heavily on applied positive psychology. And it's really specifically applied positive interventions that we're going to run through today are different ways that we can increase our feel good hormones alongside of the inevitability of a cortisol drip. And
Mm.
the feel good hormones actually combat our body's stress responses. And it's not only the feel good hormones, but it's also the feel good emotions, because remember, those go hand in hand. And we just might be able to rebalance our body's systems if we get enough of the right chemicals in there.
Yeah. So give us some examples of feel good hormones and emotions.
Yeah. So love is what's
Mm.
known as the supreme emotion. The micronutrients associated with love give us the entire chemical cocktail that we need, which is oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine.
So, I mean, love is so broad. You're talking about any form of love, right? So, whether it's romantic love or friends, family, any kind of love where you are stretching your heart and loving someone.
Yeah. According to Barbara Fredrickson, it is a micro moment of an
Mm,
agreed upon position of mutual care. So it's, that it could be your dog. You could give
yeah,
your dog a big hug, and that's a micro moment of agreed upon mutual care between you and another animal. It could be your neighbor, a friendly hello. You make eye contact, and in that moment, you've agreed upon mutual care. That's love.
yeah. And when I think of love, if it's too broad for you listening, uh, I think of the word connection.
Yes.
So when you feel drained, think about you feeling disconnected, almost like you're not plugged in anymore. And then to combat that, focus on connecting. And so
Mhm.
connecting can mean a lot of different things. Connecting, romantically, intimately, connecting via friends, connecting with family, connecting with a dog, or in my case, perhaps a chicken.
Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna stop there, and I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole of John and love and chickens. So let's move on quickly and
Yes,
swiftly.
yes, we could. Noelle is swerving around that pothole.
Oh my. So, so when we talk about upping our connection, when we talk about intentionally upping these chemicals, hormones, and neuroreceptors, we're using applied positive interventions. And what these are really specifically are strategies and exercises that have been empirically, scientifically proven to increase well being, positive cognitions, and to induce positive emotions. And the
Mhm.
inducing of those positive emotions is what gives you the chemicals.
Right, and the trick. I don't want to say trick because that sounds like there's something that's kind of false, but it's to do it in a way that's actually real. So you can't just sit there and force yourself to feel positive emotions. I mean, I think if you do that, it might go the other way. So, what are some ways that we can produce positive emotions in our lives, especially if we are feeling drained or don't have the energy, or we don't want to, quote unquote, love connect?
Yeah. So what you just said was so important that you can't just sit there and force yourself to feel. When we're
Right.
talking about applied positive interventions or PPIs, as they're called in data land, it's active. It is an active stance. It is an exercise. It is a practice. So, really similar to exercise. When you exercise and you get your heart pumping, you create different hormonal conditions in your body. It works the exact same way with these positive interventions. So, they're broken down into 7 categories, and we're gonna hit them one by one. That brings us to our very first intervention, which is savoring.
Yeah, and I love that, Noelle calls these magic beans.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
All
The
all
7
all
magic beans.
The 7 magic beans. What are the 7 different applied positive interventions that you can use? They are magic beans, and savoring is number 1. So,
Mm,
savoring is all about sensory experiences. And food is the absolute best way if you have no idea what to do, if you have no idea how to get started with a sensory experience, sitting there and really focusing on enjoying a nice cup of coffee or enjoying a meal is your way in.
yeah, and this is actually, also mindfulness, it's anchoring. So whenever you are using your senses, touch, smell, feel, all of your senses, it brings you into the present, and it naturally kind of takes you out of, your head, and now you are using all your senses to anchor.
Yes. And so when we're engaging in savoring, whatever sense you're choosing to use, physical, emotional, or social, what you want to do is to draw all of your attention there and consciously sense in the moment. Most people are really disconnected from their bodies. And so forcing yourself to feel what the mug feels like, what the coffee
Right.
tastes like. I'm touching my dining room table right now. The wood, it's mango wood. It kind of feels warm and smooth. And to get into that sensory experience is how we do this. And the very cool part about it is that consistently engaging in this, in savoring, is reliable for treating depression and mood disorders.
Mm. Yeah, and I also want to remind you guys, we're not saying if you feel drained, use food as a vehicle to, stuff your face and eat your feelings. We're saying use food as a way to get mindful and to savor and to anchor yourself by experiencing all your senses.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
taste is, unless you have COVID, really accessible,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
All right. And number two, and this is something that Noelle is a big fan of and practices, gratitude
Oh,
interventions.
yeah. Gratitude
Yeah.
is awesome. And gratitude is a very cool intervention because it's basically a 2 for 1. If you join with another person, it packs a chemical punch for both the person who gives and the person who receives.
Mm. Can you practice gratitude by yourself? Meaning, whether it's journaling, sitting, meditating. How would you do that by yourself where it's powerful? This idea of
Absolutely.
practicing gratitude.
Yeah, so gratitude interventions fall into two different categories. The first one is self reflective. So that is your solo activity. That's journaling, that could be singing, that could be writing poetry, however, painting, however you experience self expression, or however you might be curious about experiencing self expression. That's a fantastic way to work with your own feelings of gratitude.
Mm,
And then the second piece is interactive. And this is where you can actually reach out to another human. Letter writing is a wonderful tool here. Or pick up the phone, call someone, tell them what you appreciate about them. Tokens of appreciation. And if you want to actually triple and activate this, you can make an altruistic gift in the name of whoever you appreciate, because that way you're looping in our next magic
mm.
bean, which is kindness and altruism.
Yeah, and I gotta say one thing about gratitude. I find that the why people struggle with it is it's on their checklist, right? And it's such a um, it's one of those things like vulnerability where it's now wide. Everyone knows the power of it. There's science behind it, but we struggle with actually practicing it daily. And so it's always on our checklist of to dos, but we never get around to it. So when it comes to gratitude, you really have to make it a priority, or it just kind of slips throughout the day.
Yeah, and as you're thinking about this, as you're holding it in your mind, there's again, these interventions are active. So there's a huge difference between thinking about doing it and actually doing it. But the
Hmm.
cool thing about gratitude is that it is so powerful that simply naming the things and people that you're grateful for will immediately help you feel better. You'll feel more positive and you'll experience increased motivation as well.
Yeah, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, so I definitely need to practice that later. And then number three is kindness and altruism.
Yes. So I want to do an experiment, John.
I'm scared.
Yes. Be scared. Given that you woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning and we're
Hmm.
going through a laundry list of applied positive interventions, I want to take your temperature right now. And then I want to
Hmm.
take your temperature at the end of our conversation and see if you've changed the way that you feel.
Okay, let's do it.
Because I posit that simply talking about these things will make a shift.
Yeah, and if you're interested in coaching, or if you are a coach, this idea of checking someone's temperature is really good,
Mhm. So
right?
we're
Checking in
getting a
with them,
baseline.
yeah,
Yeah,
seeing
so
where they're at, and then checking it later.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how cranky are you right now?
Oh, so 10 being the angry, cranky,
Yes.
um, throwing chairs version, and then a 0 being, not angry. I would say cranky, I would say like 7. It's pretty high today.
Ooh,
Yeah, I don't feel like
okay.
doing anything, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna stop drop, and, I want you to give me, 3 things that you're grateful for now that you weren't grateful for last year.
Oh, okay, my daughter, that comes to mind right away. Super grateful to be working from home so I could, witness her first everything's like walking and stuff. I know a lot of people have to go to work and they're gone for the whole day, and since I work from home, I get that, so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for uh, 10 years ago, the way that I defined success was if I could just go shopping at Whole Foods every weekend. And because I was broke, and I remember once in a while I would go to the Whole Foods bar, and I would be like, oh my God, if I could just do my groceries at Whole Foods every weekend and be able to afford that would be amazing. And so we go to Whole Foods as kind of a family outing every Sunday, and it's become really fun and exciting, and um, I'm grateful for that, the ability to do that. And
Awesome.
then 3, I'm gonna say I'm grateful for living in a new place in Los Angeles because I grew up here my entire life and I've been everywhere. Um, that I would normally not be interested in, but I'm finding beauty in.
Oh,
So it's yeah,
awesome.
tucked away up in the hills. There's weather here, so it's really cold or really hot and quiet and stuff like that. So yeah, kind of getting out of the city without getting out of the city.
Awesome.
Grateful for
I
that.
can't
Yeah,
wait to come and visit. One day,
yeah,
one day.
absolutely.
All right. So tuck those away and let's keep going. So, number 3 is kindness and altruism. And as I mentioned earlier, this goes great with gratitude. And you can always stack these positive interventions on top of each other like a warm pile of positivity pancakes.
Mm, beans and pancakes.
Beans and pancakes. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So altruism, a lot of people associate altruism with charitable donations and charitable acts, but it doesn't have to be. This is a wonderful area where you can get super duper creative. So, even just thinking about what would it be like to curate a really romantic night for your partner,
Mm,
um, giving your child a toy to play with. Of course, yes, donating, giving meals to help beat hunger, volunteering your time in any way you can, or some things that I've done during the pandemic are pay some bills for a friend, or
mm,
pick up trash in my neighborhood, giving compliments to others.
yeah.
The magnitude doesn't matter. Any single act that you can come up with will promote happiness. So, John, can you give me 3 compliments?
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah.
I love how direct that is. Yeah, absolutely. I can. I'm gonna cross off the give your toy a child thing because she doesn't need any more toys.
Oh, no more
And
toys.
yeah, and I also want to say I saw something on the internet. This reminds me, which was really cool. You could call your, I believe, gas company and ask them for a list of people where their gas or power is going to be turned off, and you could actually pay those bills.
Oh, hell yeah.
I never knew that that existed, so that's pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but back to giving Noel compliments.
Yes.
No, well, I can't think of any. I can't think of not one compliment to give it. No. First compliment is that she is you are I'm talking like you're not here. You are consistently um okay, so let me just say one of my biggest compliments for anyone is, and I don't give this to many, is that they constantly show up, like, meaning consistent. So who you are, doesn't fluctuate and change, and it's not confusing. So, since I've known you, you've been like consistently you, and all of who you are. So the kindness, the intellect, the way that you treat people. It's been really consistent, and that is very hard. That's very rare to find. So that's one compliment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Second compliment is I love your silliness, because I'm also silly. I love that you use words like magic beans and positivity pancakes. Um, I connect with you on that. The spirit of you and the spirit of me. I think sometimes we're just, even though we're doing very adult things, I feel like we're little kids playing,
I agree.
and that. There's a big connection there, kind of on a spiritual level. And then the third compliment is, man, I appreciate the fact that we're able to connect and work together and all of this, and you've always been, on the East Coast, like, with
Yeah.
different time zones, and never I mean, it feels like you're always kind of down the street, but you've never been in LA for, years. You've always been in Philadelphia, and, I think one of the reasons why it works well is because, um it's just you're so easy to get a hold of, you're easy to reach, you're always around, like, all of that. So, um, those are my 3 compliments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That felt awesome. How did it feel for you?
It felt good. It felt, like I wasn't making it about me, you know?
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're slowly chipping away at John's cranky pants today. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, number 4 is empathy.
Mm,
And this is, I love gratitude. I'm huge on gratitude, but I think of all of the interventions, this is to me my favorite. And I think
mm,
the most important and the one that I personally use the most. And there's a really specific nuance to it. So empathy is all about building positive relationships with others, and it's really about communication and perceiving what's going on for somebody else.
right,
And when we
right.
do this, we bridge the gap between ourselves and the other people around us, and we feel less alone. We connect to other people; they feel better, they feel seen and understood, and we're able to really dig into that altruism and kindness in a focused and specific way.
Yeah, and this is a heart exercise, right? This is not a
Mhm.
mind empathize. You're not just thinking about, what it feels like, for the other person to be going through whatever he or she is going through, but you're extending your heart. You're feeling it.
You're feeling it, and
Yeah.
empathy and compassion are similarly related. When we feel compassion, we're doing that extra cut of taking on somebody's emotions. But when we empathize, we're saying, "I understand your emotions, and they're
Hmm.
valid."
Yeah. And sometimes empathy means you don't need to give someone solutions, Sometimes empathy means just to be there, just to let someone know that you feel and you care, without saying, "Okay, well, this is what you should do."
Yes, 100%. And really taking the time to understand someone often opens the door for solutions to present themselves. I
Yeah.
use empathy mapping as a tool in business, and
Mm,
it is incredibly effective. Empathy mapping, and this is just one example of how you can use empathy. If you're interested in empathy, there is a world out there for you to dig into, especially in coach land. Come see us at Journey. But here's a quickie. Empathy mapping is whatever's going on, you and another human. So I'll use John right now. Um, John's told me that he's cranky pants. And so I'm going to sprinkle him with magic beans and make him eat positivity pancakes. And but before I can do that, before we can reach solution, I need to understand where he's at. So, taking the time to think critically about what John is literally seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, saying, and doing is going to set me up for success in bridging true connection to the person in front of me. So, when you sit down to empathy map, you take a 360-degree walk around somebody else's world. And those environmental cues are really important because it makes that world real. So, for example, I know that John has a little kiddo. I know that sleep comes hard. I know that John's probably sitting in kind of a cold garage right now, tired
so true.
and maybe low on energy. And so, what is he seeing? He's seeing his room, he's seeing ideas of the things that he has to tend to, or, reminders of that, of his home life. He's hearing me. We're doing a podcast. We have to perform professionally. He's thinking, because I know John pretty well, probably about a lot of different things: podcast, squirrel, pancakes,
Mhm.
beans,
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
and just it's this kind of ping pong. What is he saying and doing? He's saying, we're having our conversation, and he's doing his very best to be present and motivated in this time. So when I pull all of that together, God, I love my friend, and I can really understand where John might be at right now. And I kind of got tears in my eyes, and I just want to give you a hug, John.
Mm, that's so sweet. And as she's saying that, I could notice a smile creeping up on my face, but also there's a warmth. And it's coming from the feeling of someone understanding, right? Even if it's for a moment, someone saying, okay, your nipples are diamonds because you're in the freezing garage and your heater's off because it makes noise and you got to do this podcast, like all the stuff. You got all these little fires that you got to put out. And, but in this moment, a friend is picturing herself in my shoes and she understands. So now notice she didn't give me any solutions. She's not going to tell me, what I need to do for the day unless I ask for them, but just her kind of verbally saying, okay, this is where you're coming from. I understand. It makes me understand you better, connect with you. Um, as a human being, that makes me feel heard, understood, loved.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. And that's the threshold from which we do our work together. And that level of connection, understanding makes it so much easier to get stuff done because we see each other.
Yeah, and this is foundational stuff
Mhm,
for when you're coaching someone, you know?
mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
2 more 3 more. Number 5 is optimism.
Yeah. So optimism is one of the building blocks of self confidence. And
Mm,
some people experience optimism naturally. They're typically extroverts. They see the glass as half full. It doesn't come naturally for everyone. And that's important to realize, especially kind of given the way that American society is set up. I like to call it the Coke commercial version of life, where if you're not
mm,
happy and psyched about everything and presenting how awesome your life is, you're doing it wrong.
right.
So a lot of this can tear people down when they feel like they're not measuring up. But the good news about optimism is that when you engage in optimism as a practice, you get the same chemical boost as you would if you experienced it naturally. And so
Yeah.
it's very much within your control to change your brain chemistry and hold up the good things along with the bad things because they exist, and to kind of hold them all in equal measure. This is what we know from Barbara Fredrickson's work, how we begin to attach to true resilience.
Mm. And I love that, that this is optimism training, right? So it's not like, to be optimistic in one moment and, doing that once every 3 months. It's training, it's practice, it's threaded into your life. It's a way of being.
Yeah. So let's play
Yeah.
with this. John, you're cold, you're tired, you're fussy,
Mhm. Mhm.
you're in your garage. Tell me what you like about your environment. What do you like about that space?
Oh, I love my garage. It's a studio. I used to work in coffee shops, but now with the pandemic, I had to build a little studio in my home, so it's become my little clubhouse. So even though it's cold right now, it's a space that I really love to come in and work in.
Get specific. What do you love?
I have a giant wood table with a bench. I have equipment. I've got my motorcycle. I've got my rowing machine behind me. I have everything I need to change my state, but also to be creative. And it reminds me of back in the '80s when I would lock myself into a room and play with my Legos. This is my Lego room.
That's awesome. Did you guys hear
Yeah.
how John's voice lifted when he was telling us all about his cool toys?
Mhm.
It's real. Optimism training works. All
Right.
right. So, number 6 is leaning into character. And the character, oh my God, what a broad topic, but let's distill it down. So, here, from a positive psychology lens, we're talking specifically about the work of Chris Peterson and Martin Seligman. Peterson passed away long before his time, and he was one of the founding thinkers in positive psychology. And of course, Martin Seligman is well known. He's at the University of Pennsylvania. And they came up with a concept of character strengths, which in essence, represent psychological pathways that all humans possess for helping ourselves and others. And these are things like kindness, generosity, hope, and even open mindedness. And this is what at Journey we refer to as living from the inside out.
Mm, yeah.
John, do you remember when we were first forming this company and we were at co-working space and we locked ourselves in a room, and I remember writing on the whiteboard, living from the inside out?
I don't remember it. Everything that we do is a blur because we've been on the whiteboard and talking, so much, but, I'm sure it happened. We both talk about this idea of living, from the inside out instead of the outside in. I mean, I definitely have a personal, experience with this.
Yeah, I have that memory vividly etched in my head. Most of the things are a blur from that time, but I remember that conversation, and probably because it struck me like lightning. And
Yeah.
that was kind of our why was, if we can help people live from the inside out with your strengths of, what lights you up, your virtues, your pathways to goodness versus the inside out, which is, society's discourse telling you you have to look a certain way or make a certain amount of money, like people will just be happier. Um,
Yeah.
and all of the research around this shows that when you focus on living from the inside out versus the outside in, um, that's when you start to experience deep, authentic connection to others and then contentment in life. So the outcomes are profound.
Yes, and I'd also want to say, and it's very hard to do, especially in the world that we live in, right? So it's not something that you just decide and it's done. It's something that you really have to work at, you know.
You know what I started doing that's been incredibly effective?
Mm,
Um, at night before I go to bed, I look at my calendar and I think about the day ahead and I look at everything that I have to do. And I mentally walk through each interaction and engagement. And I think about, from a character strength perspective, what I want to feel and how I can bring my best self to it. And I plant those seeds the night before.
yeah.
What ended up happening for me is I haven't woken up with dread or bad moods. I wake up excited because I've already decided how I'm going to lean into my day from a positive perspective. I've already decided on the positive
Mm.
outcomes. And then getting in there is so much easier.
Yeah, it's really easy to wake up and start thinking about everything that you have to do, things that you don't want to do, and then you kind of collapse on yourself because then that's lined with worry and dread. So, instead of allowing the world to come in and crash you, pulling from whether it's feeling or what I talk about a lot, your solid self, pulling from something that's internal instead of allowing the external is definitely, I think it's a life changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now our final magic bean, our final intervention is a heavy hitter, and it's meaning, finding and attaching to meaning in life.
Yeah,
And
this is everything. I mean,
this
this
is
is
everything. I know that you've done a lot of work here. What are your initial thoughts?
um I did not have a meaningful life. And I mean, I'm looking at the poster of my book. It says "Meaningful Life," Every Man's Guide to a Meaningful Life, and it's like I was miserable because I did not have a meaningful life. And then when I started all over and injected meaning into my life, hang my life on meaning. And this doesn't mean that you have to have some giant, purpose. It just means that things in your life, they have meaning, they have value, they have worth, and they're not things that you're chasing. They're not things that are, necessarily bought or external, but they're things that you have earned or built. And even things like character, things that are kind of abstract that you can't really touch. If those hold value for you, your life is going to brighten. You're not going to feel like you are just swimming to this island. You're going to feel like you're already there.
Oh yeah. For me, the most important thing about meaning is that everybody has to define it for themselves. What's
Right.
meaningful to you is going to be different than what's meaningful to me. And when we really reframe it and we turn concepts of success on its head and say, hey, how about you make the adventure of your lifetime all about figuring out what holds the most meaning for you?
Yeah.
turn over every single rock, every single stone until you discover and you hold that prize and are like, holy shit, this is where it's at.
Yeah, and you have to think about um, why something is meaningful to you, because it's going to be different, than for someone else. And if you get caught up in something should mean something to me because the world places value on it, or my neighbor does, then that's going to be a false meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we hit meaning, it gives us really cool outcomes. We get clarity. We're able to set goals and expectations for ourselves because we know who we are. And that makes us happier and more content in the long run. And this is, not little stuff. When we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self actualization, our highest level comes from attaching to meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys are feeling drained and you want to know how to ignite a spark, go through these seven. See if you are practicing these or you have these in your life. And if not, ask yourself what it looks like to start working on these seven.
Oh, yeah. And for me, I think the coolest part about this is, unlike therapy, unlike the medical models that really take time to work, all of the applied positive psychology interventions are based on what we already have inside of us right now. And so these can be immediately accessible to you. And
Yeah,
John,
absolutely.
how are you feeling now compared to when we first jumped on?
I feel good. I feel like the wheels of the plane are getting tucked in as I start to glide upward. Yeah,
Yay! I love that.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Thank you for that. And guys, thank you for listening. Until next time, signing off. This is Magic Bean and my co pilot, Positivity Pancake.
Yes.
All right, guys, be well. Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to journey.co/everything to explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a strong community to do it in. We created Journey Coaching to equip you with the tools, training, and community you need to attain your goals.
Join Journey Coaching and begin your journey towards personal freedom and a transformative state of growth today. That's jrni.co/everything.